did it. He did it. Hey, we're going to have some more fun with that as the weeks go on, so you won't want to miss what happens with that next week. If you have a Bible with you, we're going to be in Hebrews chapter 12 this morning. Hebrews chapter 12, you can use the BCM Bible. If you don't have one at all, that's our gift to you. You can take that with you or follow along online at bcnazarene.org/gatherings. Today, we are starting this new series, On Your Mark. What's going to happen is this week and for the 2 weeks after it, so a total of 3 weeks, we're going to be looking at those two verses, and we'll look at other verses as well, just to be clear, but focusing on those two verses at the start of Hebrews chapter 12. And so that'll take us to the 21st of January, and then starting the last Sunday in January, and then for the next 6 weeks, we're going to be in a series titled The Fire Within, which we have been incredibly excited about for a number of months now, and a series about passion and enthusiasm and the role of faith in all of our lives. And this is what I believe, that series, The Fire Within, is going to be so powerful that the weather is actually going to get warmer as we get closer to the series. That's what the meteorologist told. Yeah, you're welcome. And if you don't like bad jokes, you are going to dislike the next 33 minutes. So there we go. So this is Hebrews chapter 12. And this is where we're going to start. So it says this: "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up." Now, this is where we're going to focus in on today, starting here. "And let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne." And so today we're going to focusing on that middle section, let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Now, before we can jump into understanding the race that God has set before us, we need to establish two things. And this is a heavy participation Sunday. So if you don't like talking to your neighbor, I'm sorry, you're going to hate today, just because I really need your help. So first thing we need to establish, I want you to turn to your neighbor, and I want you to inform them you're running a race. Good, most of us did it. Fantastic. I saw one person who had no one sitting next to them actually turn to the empty space and say, "You're running a race." So if we could keep that up the entire way. Yeah, you're running a race. Did you know? Did you know you're running a race? Now you know. And I have to say that, for most of us, we go, really? I'm running a race? How else would you explain our actions? How else would you explain our lives if it wasn't for the fact that we were actually running a race? How would you explain our schedules and our task lists and the hurried pace with which we do everything that we do, other than the fact than to go, we're obviously, yeah, that's it. We're running a race. That's what it is. How would you explain Black Friday shopping? Have you ever been there when the doors open? If you were an outsider and had no idea what was going on, and you were there at Black Friday shopping, you would only come to the conclusion, this is some deranged scavenger hunt, where some cross-section of a scavenger hunt in the Hunger Games where the winner gets to keep their life. That's the only explainable action. How would you explain how people walk through the grocery store, other than the fact to say, hey, we're running a race? I am convinced that grocery carts need turn signals, maybe even more than our vehicles, because people use those things like weapons when you're a basket carrier and you don't have much to get. Yeah, we do. And it was actually so bad that the other day I was walking out of Target and I saw a mom who was in such a hurry that she was actually endangering her children. And so she's rushing out of Target ahead of me. And as she's moving past, and so you kind of go about both sets of doors that are automatic, and her two children are kind of trailing behind her, and she walks right out of the doors, and right into the parking lot where all the cars are passing by, and her kids are just like, they're like 10, 15 feet behind her. She's just marching to her car. She's in such a race, in such a hurry. And I'm like, I was fearful for her children. So I actually stopped and I said something. I don't usually do that, but I was so afraid that she was in such a hurry. And so I stopped her and I said, "Excuse me, Bethany." It means, just kidding. I didn't do that. I'm not that dumb. So, yeah, we got it. You're running a race, so we've established that. Now I want you to turn to your neighbor, and I want you to ask them, what race are you running? Oh, this was less participation. We need to get that. There we go. What race are you running? See, here's the interesting thing, is as you look at our actions, we are all obviously running a race. But I don't think most of us would be able to adequately answer what race we're running and why we're running that race. We had the opportunity, this is back in the fall, City of Dayton did this scavenger hunt. They did this like scavenger hunt all around downtown Dayton. And so we got down there, and you got there, you had like 2 hours to complete everything. They gave us a map, and so we had a team of 4, and we're ready to go. And so we get our map, and we did the thing that you are absolutely not supposed to do. It's like the thing that small kids do, that adults should be smart enough to know what to do. Like, we got the map, we got the list of all the things we had to do. We're like, all right, this one's on Brown Street. Let's go! And so we took off, and we run like a mile down the way, get Brown Street. We're like, where's this one? Oh, it's back where we started. Okay, let's go. Run, whole way back, in jeans, sweating profusely already. We're at our second stop. Okay, we did it. Where's the third stop? Brown Street. All right, let's go. And so we took off, and we did this for an hour and 45 minutes. And we ran 10 times the amount of space that it was necessary for any of us to run. And then we get to the end, and I felt like someone who had traveled through the desert, because we walked into a restaurant, like, just covered in sweat. Like the kind of thing that you don't want to admit, where like the back of your shirt is completely stuck to you. When I was a teenager, I used to look at the adult men and be like, why do you sweat from your back? What is that? And now I know. It was like, I can't help it. And walked into the restaurant, it was just like, water. We need water. And I'm like, oh, so a cup of water? No, like a pitcher of water for everyone. That's what we need. And we did the thing that you're not supposed to do. We started the race just running without planning out the finish line. When I was a kid growing up, we had a bunch of boys in our neighborhood, and we raced all the time. Except we raced the way little kids do. We didn't have official track lines. We didn't have a set finish line. We made it up as we went. And so you'd sit there with a group of guys and someone would say, I'm faster than you. Oh, right, we're gonna race. Okay, let's race. And so it would go like this. You go, all right, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna race. You're gonna go past the fence. You're gonna touch the second post on the fence, then you're gonna run around the tree line, the full way around the tree line. You're gonna have to touch the yellow part of the siding, not the brick, the siding on their house. You're gonna make your way back, touch the third tree, and then the first person to touch my hands is the winner, okay? Everybody got it? Anyone do this? Am I the only one who did this as a kid, made up these elaborate races? We're gonna run past, you have to grab a leaf from the fourth branch on the second tree, drop it in the watering can as you go, keep going, make your way back, first person to touch my hands wins. And then it always start like this. You go through that whole big long scenario, and then you'd always start with, all right, on your mark. And we weren't like athletic enough to get like down in the actual track stand, so it'd always be like, here we go. On your mark. But this is the thing that we did, is when someone said on your mark, we knew where the finish line was. Like if somebody would have said on your mark to begin with, no one was still there questioning like, wait, where are we going? Where's the finish line? Where's the ending? And so my question is, if someone yelled out on your mark for the race that you're already running, do you know what the finish line is? Like, do you know where you're actually headed? Do you know the reasons why you're running the race that you're running? We've already established you're running. Like every single one of us are running. Do we know what the finish line is of that race? And this is what Scripture teaches. And I want to say this. If you get nothing else out of this series, please at least get this. Your life is too important to spend it running a race that doesn't matter. Your life is too valuable it's too significant. You have too much that you are empowered and enabled to do to not run a race that matters, to not run a race that is worthy of your time and effort and energy. And so this is what I want to do in this series, is I want to look at, and it's kind of going to be a slow reveal. This is not simply us going, hey, you were running this race. This is the real finish line, because it's a little more complicated than that. But I want to give you some points and some ideas and some things to consider for the race that you're actually running to make sure that you're running a race that matters. So let's go back to Hebrews chapter 12. And we're going to look at three key parts of this. I'm going to ask you to say them out loud as we go so that it'll help us remember them and so we can have the feeling of crowd participation, which everyone likes. Thanks. So it says this, and let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. I want to hear you say, God has set before us. Oh, good. We're getting better. That's great. The race that God has set before us. So my question to you is, who set your race before you? Oh, no. Sorry. End of crowd participation. That was nice. We're learning the rhythm. No. I ask it like this. Like, the race that you're running now, did your parents set it before you? Did your siblings set it before you? Did you feel pressure to live up to someone else's life that they were living and go, oh, I need to run that race? Did your neighbors set it before you? Like the pursuit that you have, the thing that you're working so hard to do, to accomplish, to become. Like, who set it before you? Did you pick it? Did you simply go, oh, that sounds nice? Or the thing that we often do, we go, I want to be happy. They look happy. What are they doing? I'm going to go do what they're doing. That's nice. Then I'll be happy because they seem happy. That doesn't work. He said, no, to run a race that matters, it must be the race that God has set before you. The preacher D.L. Moody, this will keep you up at night. He said it like this. He said, our greatest fear should not be of failure, but of succeeding at something that doesn't really matter. Ooh, that's troubling. Our greatest fear should not be of failure, but of succeeding at something that doesn't really matter. The only way to make sure that your success actually has eternal significance is to make sure that it is the race that God has set before you. Now, again, for each one of us, this is gonna look different. You're not gonna simply be able to simply say, hey, their race with their unique abilities and relationships and place in life and skills and God-given talents, you can't simply go, they seem to be running a meaningful race, I'm gonna go run their race. That doesn't work because you have your own set of relationships and skills and abilities and God-given talents. And so you can't simply run someone else's race who seems to be doing something significant. It must be the race that God has set before you. And then the writer does this. They clue us in as to an idea as to how to know if we're running the wrong race. So after that first phrase of let us run with endurance the race God has set before us, they say this, we do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus the champion. Let me hear you say Jesus the champion. That's good. So this is what that means. Jesus the champion. It obviously means that Jesus keeps score. It means that Jesus doesn't hand out participation trophies. And so we should keep score. And we should, no, I'm just kidding. That's not what that means. Some of you were ready to amen. You were like getting ready, like, oh yeah, I like where we're going. This is the first time. Some real competitive dad was in the background like, I was tuned out, but if we're landing here, I'm in. Like, I'm ready for this. No, that's not what it means. It means that the race that you're running, Jesus is the champion of it. If the race that you're running is the one that God has set before you, then Jesus is the champion of that race. Let me explain a little further. So there has been, how many of you are NBA fans? Are there any NBA fans? There's usually like 9 of us, but we're somewhat boisterous because this is kind of how we roll. So in the NBA, there is this great debate going on as to who is the greatest player. Is it Michael Jordan or LeBron James? I'm not going to answer that in today's sermon. That will be another series that we'll do later, purely devoted to that. But there's this question as to who is better, Michael Jordan or LeBron James? And 2 years ago, this was heightened because of a comment by LeBron James. LeBron James, after winning his most recent NBA championship, said this. Someone asked him, a reporter asked him, what drives him? What inspires him? What motivates him to keep going? And he said this. He said, it's this ghost I'm chasing. This ghost that played in Chicago that I want to catch. And so just to make sure no one's too concerned, he's not talking about an actual ghost, okay? He's talking about the legacy and memory of Michael Jordan, all the significant things that he did. And he said, no, that's what motivates me, is Michael Jordan was so great at basketball, I want to catch him and surpass him because he's the standard of what greatness looks like in basketball. You know who didn't say that? Reds first baseman Joey Votto did not say that. He never said, Joey Votto, what drives you to be such a good hitter? And he's never once said, I just want to hit the baseball like Michael Jordan hit the baseball. Because he wasn't very good. Like that would be a ridiculous statement. We go, oh, so Joey Votto, you want to peak at AA in the Chicago White Sox organization? Very nice. Michael Jordan also played golf. We don't hear professional golfers going, but what motivated you? What drives you to be great at golf? I just want to play golf like Michael Jordan plays golf. We don't hear poets going, I want to write poetry like Michael Jordan wrote poetry, because he's not good at those things. It makes sense for LeBron James to say it because they're both in the same race. They say he's the champion, and so I'm trying to catch him. Now, this is what's important. If Jesus isn't the champion of the race that you're running, you're in the wrong race. Like, if he wouldn't do well at the race that you're running, you're not in the right race. You've got the wrong focus. You're not even in the wrong lane. You're in the wrong race. If you would go, hey, this is what I have to do to get ahead in my career, in my field, in my life, in my relationships. If the things that you have to do to get ahead, if you would look back at the pages of Scripture and the accounts we have of Jesus' life and come to the conclusion, Jesus wouldn't do a good job of living my life. Jesus wouldn't do a very good job. Jesus would have gotten fired a long time ago. Then the reality is that you're in the wrong race. And so if your race requires you to devalue others, to sacrifice what matters most, to delve into immorality in order to get ahead, in order to win, you're in the wrong race. Because Jesus is the champion of the race that you're called to run. And so because of that, the writer says something so important. So he says, run with endurance the race God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. I want to look at that phrase in the middle. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus. We don't do this often, but I want to show you a different translation of that verse, because basically the only translation that translates that phrase that way, we do this by keeping our eyes, is the one that we use commonly here at church. Almost every other one says it differently, and I think it says it way better. So in the NIV, it says it like this. It says, let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus. Uses that phrase, fixing our eyes on Jesus. Can I hear you say that? Fixing our eyes. Good. What we typically read is we need to mend our eyes. We need to correct our eyes. We need to heal. We need to realign our eyes. That's not what that word fix means. This is the definition of the word fix: to fasten securely in place or position. Another definition of fix is to make stationary, to fasten securely in place or position. So what the writer is saying here is he's saying of all the races that you can run, the race that matters most is the one that God has set before you. You know, if you're in this race, if Jesus would be the champion of it. And so because of that, you need to fasten securely your eyes in place. You need to lock your eyes in, because Jesus is the one who initiates and perfects our faith. It's not a matter of like, oh, they're over here, now put them over here for a little while, they can go over there. It's not just a correction. It's to lock your eyes in place so you're not looking at anything else. And here's my concern. It's not just that our eyes aren't locked in place, it's that for a lot of us, we're not even looking. Like, as we look at our days, the reality is we're just running through tasks and appointments and routines because they're coming and we've got to go fast and they're hurried. He says, no, your eyes have to be fixed. If you're going to make sure that your days matter, that they have significance, they must be fastened securely. And so for some of us, we find ourselves in different spots. For some of us, what has happened is it is the equivalent of we were a bystander at a race and someone ran up to us with a baton and handed it to us and we just took off. Now, if you saw that, you would think that would be ridiculous, right? Like that would be an absurd thing. But that's what happened for many of our lives. If someone came up really hurt and they say, hey, I need you to do this. Hey, I'm doing this. I want you to be a part of that. And we just grabbed it and we ran. And we never paused for a second to go, does this matter? Is this where I should be? Is this the race that's set out before me? Or is this simply something that someone mentioned to me? For others of us, what we're doing is we're not actually running, we're drafting. Now, if you're racing cars, that's a wonderful thing, but let me explain what drafting is spiritually. For some of us, and part of this is not all bad, we wanted faith, and so we got around a group of people who have faith, and we're letting their energy and their commitment pull us forward, which is a great thing. But at some point in time, you actually have to take steps on your own. For other of us, we're just kind of rolling to the finish. And what happened is we put forth energy into our faith years and years ago. And so we've done a great thing that we're able to reap those benefits of the things that we put in place a long time ago. But we never put forth new energy and new deposits. And Scripture talks about this idea of sowing and reaping, that we will reap what we sow. And so we've gotten that spot where we've reaped some good things. We've had some good harvest because of what we sowed before. But I want to inform you, you have to sow again. Like, you can't just sow into your faith. You can't just put energy and deposits in your 30s or your 20s or your early 40s and then continue on for the rest of your life and never put new energy and deposits in. And we talk about this. We talk about the idea of like it's the moments in my life when I was most uncomfortable, where I was called to sacrifice, that grew me the most. But the problem is we often talk about those in the past tense and not future focused, as if that's what's before me. Instead, we simply say, no, that's what's behind me. That's what I used to do. And this is what happens, is we arrive at different finish lines in our life, and we don't like where we are. And so we'll hit graduation from high school, graduation from college, first kid, 40s, retirement. And we'll have these different moments in our lives in which we're naturally called to pause and reflect, and we look around and we don't like the scene that we have created. I just want to, in some way, I want to spare you from that. I don't want you to experience that. I don't want you to look around at some moment in your life and go, what I sowed, what I invested in, the race that I ran, I realized at the finish line that it didn't matter, that it was only temporary, and it wasn't a race that was worthy of my time. And so the writer says, no, don't do that. Instead, fix your eyes, lock them in place. Now, I want to talk to you about I'll say it like this, a mindset shift that we need to adopt in order for that to happen. And so I want to talk to you about what it looks like to decompartmentalize your life. I don't know if that's a word. I might have made it up. Don't look it up in the dictionary. Just assume it's a word. So I want to see you say to your neighbor, tell them, decompartmentalize your life. We lost most of the energy, and then it came back at the very end of that. So thank you for that. Decompartmentalize your life. This is our tendency, is we think of our life as different categories, as different clumpings. And so this is what you have. You have your physical life. You have your health life. You have your emotional life. You have your spiritual life. You have your social life. You have your sections of your life. Thanks. I thought it was funny. Someone went, what? We'll keep going. And so this is what we do, is we have a tendency to view our life in all these different categories. Let me explain it like this, if I could use a prop. Our tendency is to think of our life as potted plants. Now, I know you don't say, I don't think of my life as potted plants, but this is how we do it, is we have these different categories, and we go, okay, so this is my relational life, this is my spiritual life, this is my health, this is my social life, and this is my career. And so we have all these different clumpings. And what we do is from time to time, we check the status of our plant. And we go, oh, this one, oh, spiritual life. Oh, look at you, you're bubbling over. If that really is your spiritual life, bravo for you. That's like cup filleth over. That wasn't planned out. And so you go, oh yeah, this is good. And then you may look at another one and you go, oh, this one here is struggling. And so you go, okay, I need to give water there. I need to give water there, because they're all independent and they're all distinct. And that's what we have a tendency to do. And then this is the thought. If that actually is true, you will be able to go, okay, so I can take, if my relational life is really struggling, let's say it's dead, like it's done, I should be able to remove it and everything is still fine. Is that how life works? No, absolutely not. And this is what we think, is we go, I can categorize, I can compartmentalize my life into these different areas, and as long as I give a little bit of attention to each one, then they're perfectly fine. And we need to shift that. And so here's the shift. Quit thinking of your life as a potted plant and start thinking of it like a yard, okay? Now, I want to clarify this. You need to think of it like a beautiful, green, lush yard, not like my yard. And so this is kind of my strategy to home lawn maintenance. Early in the summer, some of our neighbors were out and they were fertilizing their lawns, and my wife Bethany comes to me and she says, should you go out and fertilize our lawn? And I go, oh, no, you don't understand what I'm trying to do here. You've missed it. This is my goal. I want it just green enough that the homeowners association isn't going to come after me, but brown enough that it's not really growing. That's the goal. I want it close enough to death that it's still technically alive, but I don't want to have to mow it. So the fertilizer is the enemy. So you're not thinking my yard, okay? Not thinking my yard. You're thinking a beautiful yard. That's what I want you to imagine. And here's the understanding of yard. Like, for each blade of grass, there are roots. But at the end of the day, it's a whole system in which they're all connected. Like, they're all part of something. And so while there may be times in which I have to go, hey, I've watered the front, the back is looking a little struggling, I need to put some extra attention to my back lawn because it needs some more water. I understand that it's one connected system, that they don't stand independent from each other. And so this is what I need you to see, is you don't have a relational, a spiritual, a physical, a career, and whatever else this other guy over here was, these different parts of your life. You just have a life. Like, that's it. You have a life, and they're all connected. I was reading a little bit of Henry Nouwen not that long ago, and Henry Nouwen said it like this. He said, you don't have a ministry. You are a ministry. Oh, that's powerful. You don't have a ministry. You are a ministry. Inform your neighbor. You are a ministry. Now do this, since that was so struggling. Turn to the person who you obviously think a little bit less on your other side and tell them, you need a ministry. There we go. That's better. Now, when he said that for me, that was powerful to realize, because this is my tendency, okay? This is my tendency, is it is easy for me to go, my work is ministry, because my work is actually called ministry. But I want you to know, your work is ministry. Like your career, whatever your job is, whatever your 9 to 5 is, whether it's in an office, whether it's at home, if it's with kids, that's a ministry. You have relationships. Part of your ministry is the relationships you have. Part of your ministry is the competence with which you bring to your work. Now here's my struggle within it, is it is sometimes easy for me to go, well, I have church work that has eternal implications, and then I have to go home and unload the dishwasher. Or the reality is keep shoving plates into the dishwasher till it's overflowing, so I have to avoid unloading it to begin with. I've got church work that really matters, and then I go home and I have to take out the trash. And it's easy for me to go, no, this is far more important than this other one. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give all my attention and energy into this guy right here, and I'm not going to worry about the rest. But this is what Henry Nouwen is saying, is no, all of your life is a ministry. Because there's one clear focus that it's the race that God has set before you. And so you're fixing your eyes on Jesus. And so it's not about balancing the different areas of your life. It's about understanding, you know what, there's sometimes that my work life needs more attention. And there's sometimes that my home life needs more attention. And there's sometimes that my friends need more attention. And there's sometimes that my physical health needs more attention. And that in order to take all these areas, which I can compartmentalize, but to understand, no, it's just one life and these are all connected. They're not potted plants. It's a yard. It's all connected into one way. And so within all these areas, my calling is to fix my eyes on Jesus. If you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. What you're going to end up doing is you're going to go, I look to Jesus for my spiritual life, but at work, Jesus isn't the champion. My boss is. So I need to do what he says. And at home, Jesus isn't the champion. My spouse or my mom or whoever else that is. And what we end up doing in the end is we have all these different areas of our lives and we're running different races. And as a result, we end up acting in different ways and we don't know how to move forward because at the end of the day, we have 5 or 10 races that we're actually running instead of one. You need to run the race that God has set before you because it is the one that matters. And so you cannot think of your life as separate compartments and categories. We must begin to understand that they're all connected. And because they're all connected, the most important thing for me to do is to lock my eyes in place on Jesus. To understand that they are fixed on him. Because he is the one who initiates and perfects our faith. Now this is what we're going to do as a community, is we're going to practically take part in that through the act of communion. And I'm going to invite the communion servers if you want to go ahead and find your spots in the different places. And what communion is, it's a meal that was instituted by Jesus. And when Jesus is gathered with his disciples close to his crucifixion, he took the bread and he informs them. He says, no, this has new meaning for you. This isn't simply bread. This is my body that is broken for you. And he takes the cup and he says, no, this isn't just a drink. This is my blood that was poured out for you. And then he tells them something incredibly important. He says, do this in remembrance of me. That every time we engage in this act together, what we're doing is we're fixing our eyes on Jesus, his sacrifice, and the way of life that he modeled for us. And so this is what I want to invite you to do. In just a second, I'm going to invite you to come forward, and we're all going to come forward together, and we're going to take communion. I want you to do it in a way of understanding that you're not coming here as a member or as a part of this church. No, you're coming here as a mom, as a dad, as a son or a daughter, as a friend, as an employee, as a boss, as all these different areas of your life. We come to the table together, fixing our eyes on what God has set before us. And so I'm going to pray for us, and then I'm going to invite you to come. Let's pray. God, my prayer for us and all the things that we've experienced today, that we've participated in, that we've been a part, is that when we walk out of these doors, that our gaze would not drift. That when we leave this place and go do everything else that is calling and screaming for our attention in the different areas of our life, that we would understand in those moments, we do not leave you behind, but all the more fervently we march towards you. And so for the races that we're running, let us run races that matter, that have eternal significance. Don't let us run our neighbor's race or the race that someone has pressured us into. Let us run the race that you have set before us, and let us fix our eyes on you. And I pray this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. I invite you to stand, and whenever you're ready, to come to the close of sermon.